Kim Seonghwa's blood ran cold when he saw who was holding the gun over his daughter's body. Not his elite security team. Not his trained bodyguards. The janitor, the black woman with a mop he'd ordered deported just 3 hours earlier, was now the only thing standing between his daughter and death. And the secret she'd been hiding would destroy everything he thought he knew about his own family. I promise, the truth will leave you speechless. That is why you need to stay until the very end. Every moment builds to a revelation you won't see coming. So take a breath, and let's begin. Get out. Get out. I hate you. The crystal vase exploded against the marble wall. Miss Park, the elite nanny with 20 years of experience, ducked as shards rained down like broken promises. Miss Kim, please. I am only trying to... You smell like her. 17-year-old. Nabi's mascara streamed down her face in black rivers. You walk like her. You think some diploma makes you qualified to replace my mother. Miss Park's professional smile finally shattered. Your father is paying me to help you. My father. Nabi laughed. A sound like breaking glass. My father doesn't even know what room I sleep in. He hires strangers to love me because he can't do it himself. She grabbed a picture frame, the last photo of her mother, and for a moment Miss Park thought she'd throw that too. But Nabi just clutched it to her chest and screamed. A raw animal sound that echoed through 50 floors of Kim Tower. Get out. Get out. Get out. Downstairs, in his corner office, overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline, Kim Seonghwa heard the security alert ping. Another incident. Another nanny quitting. Another piece of his carefully constructed world falling apart. 3 days. That is how long the first nanny lasted. The second, a soft-spoken trauma therapist from London, made it to 5. She tried art therapy, music therapy, even brought in a therapy dog. Nabi locked herself in the bathroom for 6 hours. When they finally got the door open, she was sitting in the empty tub, staring at nothing, humming something dark and tuneless. The third nanny didn't even survive the interview. Nabi took one look at her and said, You smell like my mother's perfume. Get out. Seonghwa had built an empire, survived 3 assassination attempts, crushed rivals who tried to destroy him, but he couldn't get his 17-year-old daughter to eat dinner. The irony wasn't lost on him. He controlled billions, commanded loyalty from hundreds of men. But the one person who mattered most looked at him like he was a stranger, because that is what he'd become. Sir, Mr. Choi entered without knocking, a privilege reserved for emergencies. We need to talk about your daughter. Seonghwa's jaw tightened. What happened now? Nothing bad. That is what is strange. Mr. Choi pulled up his tablet loading security footage. She has been leaving her room at night, every night for the past 2 months. Where does she go? The study 4th floor. And sir, Mr. Choi hesitated. She is not alone. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m. The camera showed Nabi curled in the leather reading chair, knees pulled to chest, face swollen from crying. And there, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a bottle of Windex and a rag, was someone Seonghwa had never paid attention to. Annabel Arthur, the night janitor, 24 years old, dark blue uniform, natural afro pulled back neat. She'd been hired through an agency 2 months ago. Quiet professional, invisible. Except right now, she wasn't invisible at all. She wasn't speaking to Nabi, wasn't offering tissues or advice. Just sitting there, wiping down an already clean bookshelf in slow, methodical circles. Existing in the same space without demanding anything. 10 minutes passed in silence. Then Nabi spoke, her voice barely audible through the speakers. Do you think dead people can hear us? Annabel's hand stilled on the wood. She didn't look at Nabi, just kept her eyes on her work. I think, she said softly, that love doesn't stop, just because someone's heart does. Nabi's shoulders shook. Then she was crying again. But different this time. Not the violent, angry sobs that shook the house. Just tears. Human tears. Annabel set down her rag and moved to sit beside the chair. Not touching. Not hovering. Just close enough that Nabi could reach her if she wanted to. And she did. Nabi's hand stretched out slowly, fingers wrapping around Annabel's wrist, like a lifeline. They sat like that until dawn. Seonghwa watched the footage 3 times. Then he poured himself a drink he didn't taste. How long has this been happening? He asked. Every night for 8 weeks, sir. Same time. Same place. Sometimes they talk. Sometimes they just sit. But your daughter... Mr. Choi paused. She smiles with this woman. I haven't seen her smile since the funeral. Something twisted in Seonghwa's chest. Jealousy, resentment, and underneath it all, a question that terrified him. Why can a stranger reach my daughter when I can't? The next night, Seonghwa didn't watch through cameras. He waited in the shadows of the hallway outside the study, feeling like an intruder in his own home. At 2:30 a.m., he heard soft footsteps. Nabi appeared, barefoot, still wearing her school uniform from that morning. She hadn't changed, hadn't showered, just drifted through the house like a ghost. She pushed open the study door. Annabel was already there, organizing books that didn't need organizing. "You are early," Nabi said. "Not a question. Thought you might need the company," Annabel replied. Nabi moved to her chair, pulling her knees up. For a while, there was only silence and the soft sound of cloth against wood. Then Annabel started to hum. Seonghwa's blood turned to ice. It was barely a melody at first, just a few notes, gentle and low. But then it grew into something that made his heart stop. A lullaby. The lullaby. The one his wife used to sing, when Nabi was small, when she'd wake from nightmares and couldn't fall back asleep. His wife had learned it from her own mother. She'd told him once, a song passed down through generations. Not Korean, not English. Something older, sung in a language she'd never quite explained. A family song, a secret song. How the hell did a janitor from America know it? Nabi's eyes were closed, tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. Actually smiling. "My mom used to sing that," she whispered. Annabel's hands stilled. For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Pain, recognition, something Seonghwa couldn't name. Then it was gone. "Did she?" Annabel's voice was carefully neutral. "Every night before bed. I haven't heard it since." Nabi's voice broke. "How do you know it?" "My mother taught me." Annabel kept her eyes on the bookshelf. "She said it was a song for when you are far from home, for when you need to remember where you came from." Nabi opened her eyes. "Where did you come from?" "Savannah." But something in her tone made it sound like a lie. Or maybe just half the truth. Seonghwa stepped back into the shadows, pulling out his phone. "To Mr. Choi, I want a full investigation. Everything. Her family, her history, her mother. I want to know why she knows that song. I want to know now." The response came quickly. "Already started, sir. We'll have preliminary results by morning." But Seonghwa couldn't wait until morning. He spent the rest of the night in his office, going through every piece of Annabel Arthur's file. Work visa, clean record, references from a cleaning agency in Atlanta. On paper, she was nobody. Unremarkable. Forgettable. So why did his instincts scream danger? He pulled up security footage. Not just from tonight, but from every night over the past 2 months. The pattern was unmistakable. Every single night between 2 and 4 a.m., Nabi left her room. And every single night, Annabel was there. In the study, in the library, in the hallway. Always working, but never surprised when Nabi appeared. As if she was waiting. As if she knew. He found a clip from 3 weeks ago that made his chest tighten. His daughter collapsed on the hallway floor, screaming that she wanted her mother back. The guards had frozen, uncertain. But Annabel had simply set down her mop, knelt beside the girl, and wrapped her arms around her. Nabi had fought at first, thrashed, screamed, then crumpled. Then clung to this stranger like she was the only solid thing in a tilting world, and Annabel had held her rocking slightly, humming that same haunting melody. Seonghwa's hands clenched. He'd hired the best professionals money could buy. Child psychologists, grief counselors, trauma specialists. None of them could do what this janitor did without even trying. He should have been grateful. Instead, he felt something ugly coiling in his stomach. Resentment, jealousy, fear. Because his daughter trusted someone. Just not him. The next morning, Mr. Choi entered with a folder, his expression unreadable. "Sir, preliminary findings on Annabel Arthur." Seonghwa looked up sharply. "And her background is mostly clean, but there are significant gaps." Mr. Choi opened the folder. "She claims to have worked in Savannah for 3 years before coming to Seoul. We can only verify employment for 18 months. Before that, nothing. No tax records, no rental history, no paper trail. So she is using an alias. Possibly. Or she is very good at staying off the grid." Mr. Choi hesitated. "Sir, there is something else. The agency that placed her. It is legitimate, but the owner mentioned something odd. He said Annabel specifically requested placement at Kim Tower. She turned down 3 other positions, higher-paying positions, to wait for an opening here. Seonghwa's fingers drummed against his desk. She came here on purpose. It appears so. Why? What does she want? Mr. Choi had no answer. But Seonghwa's mind was already racing through possibilities. Was she sent by a rival? Was this an elaborate kidnapping scheme? Was she gathering intelligence on his organization? Or was it something else? Something personal? Keep digging, Seonghwa ordered. I want to know everything about this woman. Where she really came from. Who sent her. And why she is targeting my daughter. That evening, Seonghwa did something he hadn't done in months. He left his office early and went home. Really home. Not to his study or his gym or his private wing, but to the main living area where Nabi usually avoided him. She was in the kitchen, sitting at the counter with a bowl of ramen going cold in front of her. Annabel stood nearby, wiping down counters that were already spotless. Nabi, Seonghwa said. His voice came out rougher than intended. His daughter's spine went rigid. She didn't turn around. I thought we could have dinner together, he continued. Just the 2 of us. I am not hungry. You haven't eaten all day. How would you know? The words were sharp-cutting. You are never here. I am here now, finally. She turned to look at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed, hollow, burning with something that looked like hate. Are you? Or are you just checking on your investment? Making sure the Kim legacy doesn't fall apart because your daughter's too broken to function? That is not fair. Fair, Nabi laughed. A sound like breaking glass. You want to talk about fair? Where were you when Mom died? When I was screaming for her in the hospital and the doctors kept saying there was nothing they could do. I was there. You were on your phone. She was standing now, shaking. Mom was dying. And you were in the hallway closing some deal, making sure your precious empire didn't fall apart. I was trying to provide for... I didn't need money. I needed my father. The ramen bowl clattered to the floor, broth spreading across the pristine tile like blood. But you were too busy being Kim Seonghwa, the great CEO, the untouchable syndicate leader, to be my dad. She grabbed a glass from the counter and hurled it at the wall. It exploded, shards flying. You don't get to walk in here after months of hiding and pretend you care. You don't get to play father now, not when I needed you, not when Mom needed you. Her voice broke. Not when we were both dying and you just left. The silence that followed was deafening. Seonghwa stood frozen, his daughter's words hitting harder than any assassin's bullet ever had. Because they were true. Every word was true. Miss Kim. Annabel's voice cut through the chaos, quiet but firm. She didn't move from her spot by the counter. Just spoke. He is trying. Nabi spun to face her, something desperate and wild in her expression. You don't know what he is like. You don't know. No. Annabel agreed. But I know what grief looks like, and I know he lost someone too. The words landed like stones in still water. Nabi's anger cracked, revealing the raw pain underneath. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. He lost his wife, she whispered. I lost my mom. It is not the same. You are right, Annabel said gently. It is not the same at all. Seonghwa watched this stranger, this janitor, diffuse his daughter's rage with just a few quiet words. Something in his chest twisted painfully. Nabi was crying now, hands covering her face. Annabel moved to her side, one hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Not fixing. Not lecturing. Just there. Why don't you two try again tomorrow? Annabel suggested softly, looking at Seonghwa for the first time. Her eyes were dark, unreadable. When you are both ready. It wasn't a question, it was a dismissal. Seonghwa nodded stiffly and left. But as he walked away, he heard Nabi's voice, small and broken. Why can't he be like you? Why can't he just be here? And Annabel's response, so quiet he almost missed it. Because he doesn't know how. But maybe he is learning. Later that night, Seonghwa couldn't sleep. He paced his office, his daughter's words echoing in his head. You were on your phone. Mom was dying, and you were closing a deal. He told himself he was being practical. That someone had to handle the business. That falling apart wouldn't bring his wife back. But the truth was simpler and uglier. He hadn't known how to watch her die. So he'd run, hidden in work, in control, in anything that didn't require him to feel. And his daughter had paid the price. On impulse, he went to Nabi's room. She wasn't there. He found her in the study, curled up in the chair, asleep. Her face was peaceful in a way it never was when she was awake. Something glinted on the floor beside the chair, a locket, silver, delicate, old. It must have fallen from her pocket. He shouldn't open it. It was private, hers. But his hands moved anyway, thumbnail finding the tiny clasp. The locket opened. Inside were two photographs, facing each other. On the left, his wife. Younger, maybe 25, her smile radiant and unguarded. He'd never seen this photo before. On the right, another woman, nearly identical. The same eyes, the same smile, the same delicate bone structure. But different enough that he knew immediately, this wasn't his wife. A sister, his wife had a sister. His heart stopped. He'd asked her once, early in their relationship, about her family. She'd smiled sadly and said they were gone. That she was alone. He'd never pushed, in his world. People had secrets, he understood. But this, he looked closer at the photo of the unknown woman. She was holding something. No, someone, a baby. An infant wrapped in a yellow blanket, tiny face barely visible. His hands started to shake. He pulled out his phone and photographed the locket's contents. Then, he carefully closed it and placed it back exactly where he'd found it. Back in his office, he sent the image to Mr. Choi with a single message: find her. Find this woman. Now. The response came 4 hours later, at 3 a.m. Sir. You need to see this. Sending encrypted file now. Seonghwa opened the document. What he saw made his blood turn to ice. An old family registry. The kind kept by traditional families to track bloodlines. Faded, clearly scanned from paper records decades old. But the names were clear. 2 sisters. His wife's name was there, along with another, Eleanor Arthur, Eleanor. Annabel. The connection hit him like a physical blow. He scrolled frantically. Eleanor Arthur had been exiled from the family 23 years ago. She'd married an American, someone deemed unsuitable. The family, not his wife's parents, but someone higher, someone with authority in a world Seonghwa recognized all too well, had ordered her sent away. Sent to America, to Savannah, where she'd had a daughter, Annabel. His hand shook as he pulled up more files. Photos from Annabel's visa application, date of birth, background information he'd overlooked because he'd been looking for criminal ties, not family ones. Annabel Arthur was 24 years old. The timeline matched. The location matched. She was his wife's niece, Nabi's cousin, and she'd come to Seoul deliberately. Taken a janitor position in his building. Positioned herself in his daughter's life. All without saying a word. Why? What did she want? Revenge? Money? Was this some elaborate scheme to get close to the family, to stake a claim on the Kim fortune? Or was it something else? He pulled up the security footage again, watching Annabel with new eyes. The way she looked at Nabi wasn't predatory. It was protective. Almost maternal. As if she'd known all along who Nabi was. As if she'd come here not to take something, but to give something back. But how long had Nabi known? Had his daughter been lying to him this whole time, meeting with this woman in secret, building a relationship with family he'd never even known existed? The betrayal cut deeper than any business rival's knife ever had. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. He needed answers. Now. He pulled on his jacket and headed for the staff quarters in the building's lower level. Annabel Arthur had exactly 3 minutes to explain herself before he had her on a plane back to America. Or worse. But when he reached her small room, he stopped at the door. Through the thin wall, he could hear her voice. She was on the phone, speaking English. Mom, I know what you said. But she needed someone. A pause. No, he doesn't know yet. I couldn't just... Another pause. Longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice cracked. She looked so much like her. Mom, she has Aunt Jisoo's eyes. The same expressions. The same way of tilting her head when she is sad. Silence. I can't just leave her alone in this place. I can't do to her what we did to Aunt Jisoo. More silence. Then, so quietly he almost didn't hear. She is family. That is all that matters. Family doesn't abandon family. Not again. Never again. Seonghwa's hand froze on the doorknob. His fury wavered, replaced by something more complicated, more painful. This woman hadn't come for money. She'd come for Nabi. She'd come because she was family. And family didn't abandon each other, even when they'd been exiled, even when decades had passed, even when the cost was everything. He stepped back from the door and returned to his office, the Locket photo still glowing on his phone screen. 2 sisters. One he'd loved, one he'd never known existed. And now, a daughter and a cousin, finding each other in the ruins of grief. He should be angry. He should feel threatened. Instead, for the first time since his wife's death, he felt something he hadn't expected. Shame. Because while he'd been building empires and maintaining control, his daughter had been drowning. And the only person who'd jumped in to save her was someone he'd almost thrown away without a second thought. By morning, Seonghwa had made his decision. He would watch. Wait. Gather more evidence. Then confront them when he had the full picture. But fate had other plans. It was Saturday. No school for Nabi. Seonghwa had cleared his schedule, intending to review more files on the Arthur family. Instead, he found himself walking the halls of his own home like a stranger, listening for voices, for anything that would tell him what was happening under his own roof. He heard them in the library. The door was cracked open just enough that he could see inside. Nabi sat cross-legged on the Persian rug, papers spread around her in a careful pattern. Annabel knelt beside her, pointing at something on one of the pages. "So this is your grandmother?" Nabi's voice was soft, wondering. "Our grandmother." Seonghwa's breath caught. "Yes," Annabel said quietly. "Her name was Minjisu. She had your mom when she was 22, and my mom Eleanor 2 years later. Why didn't I know about her? About any of them?" Pain and anger mixed in Nabi's voice. "Why did my mom never tell me I had an aunt? That I had you?" Annabel's hand moved to rest gently on Nabi's shoulder. "Because your father's world is dangerous. And my mother, she was dangerous too in her own way. She married someone the family didn't approve of. Someone from a rival organization." Seonghwa's hands clenched into fists. "They exiled her to protect the bloodline," Annabel continued. "To protect your mother, our grandmother made a choice. Save one daughter by sacrificing the other. That is horrible. It was survival." Annabel's voice was steady but sad. "Our family wasn't just wealthy, Nabi. They were connected to things that destroy people. Your mother chose your father because he could protect you from all of that, but it meant cutting ties with everyone else, including us. So when my mom died," Nabi's voice cracked, "you came to find me. My mother told me everything before she passed last year." Annabel held up a worn envelope, letters, photos, a family tree, everything she'd kept hidden for decades. "She told me about you. About your mother. About how much she'd wanted to see her sister again but never could." Nabi took the envelope with trembling hands. "Does my father know?" Annabel's response was immediate and firm. "I didn't come here to cause trouble, Nabi. I came because you lost your mother, and I just lost mine, and I thought, maybe we could help each other. Maybe we didn't have to be alone. But you are pretending to be a janitor. Because your father would never have let me near you if he knew who I really was." Annabel's voice was gentle but certain. "Men like him, men with power, they see everything as a threat. He would have run a background check, seen the exile, the rival family connections, and assumed I was dangerous. He would have kept me away from you, for your protection, and I would have kept drowning," Nabi whispered. "Yes." Nabi looked down at the papers spread before them. A family tree, hand-drawn, showing connections Seonghwa had just discovered. 2 sisters, 2 daughters. A bloodline that should have been severed but somehow had found its way back together. "I am glad you came," Nabi said. "You are the only person who understands. The only person who doesn't try to fix me or change me or make me be okay when I am not." "I know." Annabel pulled her into a hug. "We're family. That is forever. No matter what happens, I am not leaving you alone again." Seonghwa stepped back from the door, his mind reeling. Part of him, the CEO, the syndicate leader, saw only threat. An unknown player inserting herself into his family, manipulating his daughter, possibly positioning herself to claim inheritance or leverage. But another part, the father, the widower, saw something else entirely. He saw his daughters smiling, engaged with the world again, finding comfort in the one connection to her mother that still remained. He turned away from the library and pulled out his phone. "To Mr. Choi, I need a DNA test. Discreetly, Annabel, Arthur, and my daughter. I want confirmation." The response came within seconds. "Already arranged, sir." We collected samples from the janitor's quarters this morning. Results in 48 hours. Seonghwa shouldn't have been surprised. Mr. Choi was nothing if not thorough. 2 days, then he'd have proof. Then he'd know for certain whether this woman was truly family or an elaborate fraud. The wait was excruciating. Seonghwa threw himself into work, but his mind kept drifting. He watched Nabi at breakfast, seeing her differently now. She'd been keeping this secret for weeks, maybe months. Meeting with Annabel, learning about the family history, building a relationship right under his nose. His daughter was stronger than he'd given her credit for, and perhaps smarter too. On the second evening, Mr. Choi entered his office with a sealed envelope. The results, sir. Seonghwa's hand was steady as he tore it open. His eyes scanned the technical jargon, the percentages, the final conclusion: DNA match. 99.8% probability of first-cousin relationship. Shared genetic markers. Consistent with maternal family line, Annabel Arthur was indeed his wife's niece. Nabi's cousin family. The truth should have brought clarity. Instead, it brought rage. Because if she was family, why the deception? Why the disguise? Why not come to him directly and explain? Unless she had other motives. Unless this was all an elaborate long game to infiltrate his empire, to turn his daughter against him, to position herself as the heir apparent when Nabi was too broken to function. His syndicate had enemies who tried less sophisticated approaches. "Bring her to my office," Seonghwa said, his voice cold. "Now." Mr. Choi hesitated. "Sir, perhaps we should. Now." 10 minutes later, Annabel Arthur stood before his desk. She'd changed out of her janitor's uniform and wore simple jeans and a sweater. Without the work clothes, she looked younger, more vulnerable. But Seonghwa couldn't afford to see her that way. "Sit," he commanded. She remained standing. "With respect, Mr. Kim, I'd rather not. That wasn't a request. And I am not your employee anymore." Her voice was calm, steady. "I resigned an hour ago. I knew this moment was coming." Seonghwa moved around his desk, positioning himself between her and the door. "You've been lying to me since the day you arrived." "I never lied. I just didn't volunteer information you wouldn't have believed anyway. You are my wife's niece." He threw the DNA results on the desk. "You are Nabi's cousin. You came here deliberately, manipulated your way into my daughter's life." "I came here because my cousin lost her mother and I just lost mine." Annabel's composure cracked slightly. "I came because I know what it is like to grieve alone. And I thought maybe, just maybe, we could help each other. By pretending to be a janitor, by sneaking around in the middle of the night, by turning my daughter against me, turning her against you." Annabel's eyes flashed. "Your daughter was already against you, Mr. Kim. She was drowning in grief and you were nowhere to be found. I didn't turn her against you. You did that yourself. How dare you? How dare I what? Tell you the truth. You want to know why I didn't come to you directly?" Annabel stepped forward, her voice rising. "Because men like you don't trust people like me. You would have run a background check, seen the exile, the rival family connections, and assumed I was a threat. You would have had me deported before I could say a word. I am trying to protect my daughter. From what? From family. From the only person who actually understands what she is going through." Annabel's voice cracked. "You lost your wife, Mr. Kim. I lost my mother. Nabi lost the one person who made her feel safe. We're all drowning in the same grief. The difference is, Nabi and I decided to hold on to each other instead of pretending we're fine. This isn't about grief." Seonghwa's control snapped. His fist slammed down on the desk, making everything jump. "This is about you worming your way into my family, playing on my daughter's emotions, positioning yourself to claim what isn't yours. What exactly do you think I am after? Money, power, a piece of the Kim empire." Annabel laughed, but there was no humor in it. The sound was broken, bitter. "I don't want your money. I have a trust fund from my father, enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. I don't want your power. I want nothing to do with your syndicate or your business." She met his eyes, unflinching. "I came here for one reason and one reason only, to make sure my cousin wasn't alone. To give her what my mother never got, family." "Then why didn't you come to me directly? Why all the secrecy?" "Because you wouldn't have let me near her." Annabel's voice rose. "You would have done exactly what you are doing now. Assumed I was a threat, pushed me away, and convinced yourself you were protecting Nabi. and she would have kept drowning while you told yourself you were doing the right thing. The words cut deep because they were true. Seonghwa would have done exactly that. Had done exactly that with everyone else who tried to get close to his daughter. "Get out," he said, his voice cold and final. "You have 24 hours to leave Korea. If I see you anywhere near my daughter again, I'll have you arrested for trespassing, for fraud, for whatever I need to charge you with to keep you away. You are going to break her heart." Annabel's voice was quiet now, almost sad. "Again. Get out." Annabel turned toward the door, then stopped, her hand on the handle. "For what it is worth," she said without turning around. "I don't think you are a bad man, just a scared one. Scared of losing control, scared of losing her. But the tighter you hold on, the more she'll slip away." Her voice softened. "I learned that from my mother. She held onto grudges so tightly, she forgot how to hold onto the people who mattered. She died alone, Mr. Kim. Angry and alone. Is that what you want? To push away everyone who cares until there is no one left?" Then she was gone. Seonghwa stood alone in his office. Chest heaving, hands shaking. He'd done the right thing. Protected his family. Removed the threat. So why did it feel like he just made the worst mistake of his life? The answer came 3 hours later. In the form of gunfire. Boom. 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 The attack happened at 11 p.m. Seonghwa was still in his office when the building's emergency alarms shrieked to life. The lights flickered. The floor shook. Mr. Choi burst through the door, weapon drawn, face grim. "Sir, we're under assault. Jung Syndicate. They've breached the lower floors with explosives. We need to get you to the safe room now." Seonghwa's blood went cold. "Nabi. Where is Nabi?" "Top floor. Her room. We've dispatched a team." He was already running. The stairwell echoed with shouts, gunfire, the acrid smell of smoke. His security team moved with him, weapons drawn, but all Seonghwa could think about was his daughter alone in her room while his enemies stormed the building. This was his fault. He'd been so focused on Annabel, on the internal threat, that he'd missed the external one. Some rival had seen weakness in his distraction and struck. And now, Nabi would pay the price. They reached the top floor to find carnage. Bodies, his guards, loyal men he'd known for years, sprawled in the hallway. Blood on the walls. The door to Nabi's suite hung open, splintered, barely on its hinges. "Nabi." His voice cracked as he ran inside. The scene before him made his heart stop. Furniture overturned. Glass shattered everywhere. Bullet holes in the walls. And in the center of it all, Annabel Arthur stood over his daughter like a shield. A guard's dropped weapon in her hands, aimed at 2 men Seonghwa, recognized as enforcers from the Jung Syndicate. Blood ran down Annabel's left arm, soaking her sleeve. She'd been shot. But she hadn't moved from her position protecting Nabi, who crouched behind her, shaking but alive. "Don't move." Annabel's voice was steady despite the pain, despite the blood. "I don't care who sent you. You are not touching her." One of the men laughed. "You are just a janitor, sweetheart. Put the gun down before you get hurt worse." I said don't move. The man lunged forward. Annabel fired. Bang. The shot was clean. Professional, not a kill shot, but enough to drop him. The second man hesitated, reaching for his weapon. And in that moment, Seonghwa's security team flooded the room. Within seconds, both attackers were subdued, disarmed, on the ground. But Seonghwa only had eyes for the woman still standing guard over his daughter. Blood dripping from her wounded arm. The weapons still raised. Still ready. Still protecting. Annabel. Nabi scrambled out from behind her, tears streaming down her face. "You are hurt. You are bleeding. I am fine." Annabel lowered the gun carefully, her hand shaking now. "Are you okay? Did they touch you?" "No, you saved me. You could have left." "I thought you left. Dad said you were leaving, and I thought..." Nabi's voice broke. "You came back." "I told you," Annabel said softly, swaying slightly on her feet. "We're family. I wasn't going to leave you alone. Not ever." Then her knees buckled. Seonghwa caught her before she hit the ground. The next few hours were a blur. Medics. Debriefings. Security protocols. Police. The Jung Syndicate's attack had been coordinated, but ultimately unsuccessful. They'd gambled on Seonghwa being distracted. And they'd been right. But they hadn't counted on a janitor with military training who'd put herself between their target and certain death. Seonghwa learned That detail from Mr. Miss Choi while sitting outside the medical suite where Annabel was being treated. Her father, Mr. Choi reported quietly, scrolling through his tablet, wasn't just unsuitable. He was former U.S. military intelligence, specialized in close protection and counterterrorism. When he was discharged, he trained his daughter extensively. She took a bullet for Nabi. She did more than that, sir. Mr. Choi pulled up security footage. Watch this. The video showed Annabel in the building's lower lobby when the first explosion hit. She'd been leaving, actually leaving suitcase in hand, walking toward the exit. Then the alarms went off, and instead of running away, she turned around, dropped her suitcase, and ran toward the danger. She went straight to your daughter's room, Mr. Choi continued. She barricaded the door, positioned herself as a human shield. And when they broke through, she held off two armed men with nothing but a confiscated weapon and sheer determination. The footage showed it all. Annabel pushing Nabi behind her, taking the bullet meant for Nabi. Never flinching, never backing down. She wasn't here for money, sir. Mr. Choi looked at him steadily. She was here to protect family. And when you sent her away, she came back anyway. Because that is what family does. Seonghwa's hands clenched. He'd been so sure, so convinced that Annabel was a threat. A manipulator, someone using his daughter for personal gain. Instead, she'd proven loyalty in the only language he truly understood. With blood, the doctor emerged from the medical suite, pulling off his gloves. She'll be fine. The bullet went through clean, no major damage. She needs rest and antibiotics, but she is stable. He paused. She is lucky. A few inches to the right, and we'd be having a very different conversation. Can I see her? She is awake, but her cousin is with her. Seonghwa entered quietly. Nabi sat beside the bed, holding Annabel's uninjured hand, her face streaked with tears. She looked up when he entered, and the expression in her eyes was something he'd never seen before. Not anger, not resentment. Accusation. She almost died because of me, Nabi said, her voice trembling. Because you sent her away and she came back anyway, because she wouldn't leave me alone. I know. Do you, Nabi's voice rose. Do you actually know what it is like to finally find someone who understands you, who doesn't try to fix you or change you, who just lets you exist, and then watch them almost die protecting you? Your mother, Seonghwa said quietly. I watched your mother die. I know exactly what it is like. The admission seemed to drain some of the fight from Nabi. She looked back at Annabel's sleeping form. No, not sleeping. Annabel's eyes were open now, watching him with that same dark, unreadable expression. She is family, Nabi said. She is all I have left of Mom, and you tried to send her away. I was wrong. The words came harder than any business deal he'd ever negotiated. Harder than any confession he'd ever made, but they were true. I was scared, he continued, moving to stand on the other side of the bed. Scared of losing you. Scared of losing control. Scared that if I let her in, it would mean I'd failed as a father, that someone else could give you what I couldn't. She gave me understanding, Nabi said. She gave me family. She didn't try to replace you, Dad. She tried to help us both. I know that now. He looked at Annabel, this woman who'd upended his world. She came here because she knew what you needed, what we both needed, even though I was too proud to see it. So what happens now? Nabi's voice was small, afraid. Are you going to send her away again? Seonghwa was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out the locket he'd found. He'd been carrying it since that night, unsure what to do with the knowledge it represented. Now, he said, placing it gently on Annabel's bedside table, we stop pretending that family is just blood. He looked at his daughter. Your mother taught me that. She chose me even though it meant leaving everything behind. Annabel chose you the same way. Chose to be here. To protect you. Even when it cost her everything. Even when I threatened her. Even when she had every reason to leave. He turned to Annabel, meeting her eyes. I am sorry, he said simply. For doubting you. For not seeing what you were really doing here. For almost losing you before I understood. You were protecting your daughter, Annabel replied, her voice hoarse. I understand that. I just wish you'd trusted that I was trying to do the same thing. I do now. He paused. The question is, can you forgive me? Annabel glanced at Nabi, whose tears were falling again. But different this time. Hopeful tears. Yeah, Annabel said. A small smile tugging at her lips despite the pain. I think I can manage that. Nabi let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. So you are staying? Really staying? If your father will have me. Seonghwa found himself almost smiling. You are being promoted. From janitor to family. I hope that is acceptable. It is perfect. In the days that followed, things shifted in the Kim household. Annabel moved from the staff quarters to a guest suite on the family floor. Security was briefed on her new status. Not as an employee, but as family. The extended Arthur family. And slowly, carefully, the three of them began learning how to be what they'd never been before. A family. It wasn't easy. Seonghwa and Annabel clashed over Nabi's care more than once. He wanted structure and therapy. She wanted space and patience. But there was respect now. Understanding. A shared goal that mattered more than pride or control. And Nabi began to heal. She still had bad days. Days when she couldn't get out of bed. Days when the grief hit so hard. She could barely breathe. But now she had her father learning to be present instead of perfect. Learning that sometimes the best thing he could do was just sit beside her and say nothing at all. And she had her cousin who understood that grief wasn't something to be fixed. It was something to be survived, one day at a time, together. One evening, about a month after the attack, Seonghwa found them in the library again. But this time, the family tree was on his desk, placed there deliberately for him to see. Two sisters, reunited through their daughters, a bloodline that had survived exile, death, betrayal, and violence to find its way back together. Annabel looked up as he entered. Nabi wanted you to see it. All of it. No more secrets. He studied the carefully drawn branches. The names and dates. His wife's family history no longer hidden but acknowledged, accepted, claimed. My wife used to say something, he said quietly. She said that family isn't who you are born to. It is who shows up when everything falls apart. Smart woman, Annabel said. She was. He looked at his daughter, peaceful for the first time in months. She would have loved knowing you were here. That you found each other. I think she knew, Nabi said softly. I think Mom always knew. That is why she kept the locket. Why she never threw away those photos. She wanted us to find each other. Maybe she did. Seonghwa moved to stand beside them, looking at the family tree. His empire was built on power control, strategic alliances, deals made in shadows, loyalty bought with fear or money. But this messy, complicated, beautiful thing they were building, this was something different. This was what his wife had died protecting. What Annabel had risked everything to preserve. What Nabi needed to survive. Family, real family, the kind written not in blood alone, but in choice and sacrifice and showing up when it mattered most. Thank you, he said to Annabel, for being stubborn enough to stay, for being brave enough to protect her, for being family when we needed it most. Annabel's eyes shimmered with tears. That is what we do, we show up. And in that moment, Seonghwa understood what he'd been missing all along. His daughter didn't need him to be perfect. She didn't need elite nannies or expensive therapists or total control. She just needed family. People who showed up. People who stayed. People who loved her enough to take a bullet. To defy orders. To choose her over everything else. And now, finally, she had exactly that. Nabi looked up at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in months she smiled. Not a broken smile. Not a polite smile. A real one. Thanks, Dad, she said softly, for letting her stay. For trying. He sat down beside them on the floor, something he would have thought beneath his dignity just weeks ago. That is all I can do, he said. Try, and keep trying, even when I get it wrong. That is all any of us can do, Annabel said. And for the first time since his wife died, sitting on the floor with his daughter and the niece he never knew he had, Seonghwa felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. Sometimes family isn't the one you were born into. Sometimes it is the one that refuses to give up on you. The one that takes a bullet. The one that shows up at 2 a.m. just to sit in silence. The one that sees you drowning and jumps in without hesitation. Nabi found that in Annabel. Seonghwa found it when he almost lost everything. And maybe, just maybe, that is what all of us are looking for. Someone who chooses us, again and again, no matter how hard we push them away. I'd love to know, have you ever had someone show up for you like that? Someone who became family when you needed it most? Drop a comment and tell me about it. And hey, let me know where you are watching from. There is something powerful about knowing these stories reach people all over the world. All of us looking for the same thing, connection. Hit that subscribe button if this story moved you. Because next week, I've got another one that'll make you believe in the power of family all over again. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. See you in the next one.